Welcome to Kaiser Watch with John Kaiser. I'm your host, Jim Goddard. John, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Jim, it's good to be back on the show. Today we're going to touch on three topics. One is how carbon capture could end up making Verde Agritech's alternative potash a big success in Brazil. The other one will be why I think Toyota may be the mystery investor behind FPX Nickel. And then just a brief comment on the fire bans in the James Bay region, which is still hindering the boots on the ground strategy that was supposed to deliver lots of new discoveries this summer.
Why is Verde Agritech's carbon capture news potentially a big deal?
Verde Agritech announced on Wednesday that Professor David Manning of Newcastle University had completed studies which confirmed that a ton of K Forte, which is the primary alternative potash that you apply in powdered form onto the fields as a source of potassium, that it captures about 120 kilograms of carbon dioxide per ton. Now, this is very, very significant because carbon capture is supposed to be a trillion-dollar-plus industry, and the International Energy Agency regards it as a key part of the 2050 net zero emissions targets. Carbon capture primarily happens at the source where it is generated. There are direct air capture systems that exist where it just sucks it out of the air, and they usually build these close to whatever storage reservoir, which is usually some sort of underground rock formation. But the general push for the air capture or carbon dioxide capture is to pipe it from the source where it's generated, such as, say, a power plant that's still burning natural gas or some cement factory where it's being released, and transport it to these reservoirs. So there's a huge pipeline building campaign coming over the next 10, 15 years. There's also repurposing of the existing oil and natural gas pipelines. Some of them are going to be repurposed for delivering hydrogen that's going to be made at these wind farms and solar farms. Hydrogen is a way of temporarily storing surplus energy, and it can be deployed in solid oxide fuel cells, hydrogen fuel cells, and the IEA thinks that the large-scale transport sector is never going to run on lithium-ion batteries, but is going to run on hydrogen fuel. But what's interesting about what Verde Agritech came up with is that its product is a fertilizer. It does good things to the fields onto which the farmers apply it. And the natural activity of the microbes in the ground and the secretions from the root, they break it apart. And because of the unusual nature of glauconite and its silicate structure, it packs away carbon dioxide quite rapidly, a lot faster than many of these solutions involving ultra-basic rocks such as basalt that are being tried. And it'd be interesting to see how it compares to the brucite, the magnesium-rich mineral within FPX Nickel's various projects that is generating, where it wants to use them to also do either direct air capture or push piped carbon dioxide in to pack it away permanently. So with this as a natural type of byproduct of simply using this as a fertilizer, as an alternative to potassium chloride, whose salt content is quite harmful to the fields in Brazil, especially Brazil, because of the heavy rainfall that washes so much of it away, so that you have to keep adding extra potassium chloride. This, to me, is a very big deal, because one of the concerns I've had after last year, they expanded their total production capacity to 3 million tons. They had the windfall revenue year when potassium chloride soared over $1,000 per ton. It has since collapsed. At the end of June, it was down to $325 a ton from Vancouver port, which means it's probably $375 to $400 on the Brazilian port. But the other bad thing that we've been seeing is that because of the high interest rate policy and the global slowdown in the economy, the kinds of crops that the Brazilians grow have had weak prices. So the farm sector is in a significant stress right now. And one of the things about the potassium is you can do without it for a couple of years. More than that, you're going to have trouble. But you cannot do without nitrogen and phosphorus, which are critical. So if they are feeling tight in terms of credit and that, they'll hold off on the potash. So I've been concerned. It's already a given. They're going to have considerably lower revenues in 2023 than they did in 2022 because they're going to be selling K-Forte at a much lower price than they were last year. But I've also been concerned about their ability to grow their market. And so their next the deadline for filing their H1 financials is August 14th. So I've been kind of dreading hearing what are they going to tell us about how much they did or didn't physically sell. Yes, revenues will be down, but what about physical volume sold? Are the farmers continuing to embrace K-Forte as an alternative to potassium chloride, or are they simply doing less of both while they deal with their current credit and financial crisis? So when I saw this new release, I said, aha, carbon credits. What if part of this whole sort of carbon capture strategy that the IEA and all these government entities are pushing up, what if there were ways to capture it as a byproduct of doing something else? And you could sell the carbon credit to the big companies out there which are going to need them to offset, for example, you wouldn't think technology companies have much carbon footprints, but with all their server farms and that, they do have a big carbon footprint. So what if these groups start looking to buy carbon credits? Now, the Brazilian farmers, they really couldn't give a damn about climate change or anything like that unless it somehow hurts their crops or their water supply. But money talks. And one way that Verde Agritech could leapfrog KCL and penetrate the market in a big way is to sell a carbon credit for each ton of K-Forte that they deliver to the farmer and charge the farmer a significant discount. Right now, the best discounts they have are sort of volume or repeat business discounts, which are modestly lower than the KCL prices. But if they can sell carbon credits, and they were trading around $100 per ton, recently per ton of carbon dioxide. If they could get a significant credit, this could allow them to sell this product that does better than the KCL to the farmers and charge them a lot less, and they would then adopt it. So the next stage that they have to do is a life cycle analysis. So it's one thing to say, okay, every ton of K-Forte packs away 120 kilograms of carbon dioxide, but how big was the carbon footprint in quarrying this material, grinding it up, and then transporting it all the way to the farmers? So this carbon footprint analysis has to be done. And apparently this Canadian consultancy that they mentioned is working on it, has been working on it for some time, and it could be 3 to 4 weeks. So we're hoping that by the time they tell us what the performance in the second half was like for Verde Agritech, we will hear that the carbon footprint is, say, hopefully something small, like maybe 20 kilograms of carbon dioxide, so that there's a 100 kilogram credit that they can then package up and sell into the market. So I think this is potentially a big deal. This year is not going to be great for Verde Agritech in terms of sales growth because of the difficulties of the farm sector in Brazil. But I think 2024 things will turn around, and if they have this carbon credit linked to carbon capture that's done naturally by simply applying the K-Forte to to the soil. That, I think, could really see them start to displace the KCl consumption, 90% of which the Brazilians import. And I asked Chris Veloso, well, you're really, the large-scale farmers, they want a granulated product, and the blenders don't want to deal with your powder. What if you succeed in making a granulated form that is acceptable to the blenders and are able to then start distributing K-Forte made from a silicate form of potassium, have the blenders start selling this as part of their blends to the farmers, and says, would that hurt the carbon capture nature of the K-Forte? And he says no, because they're designed to once they're applied into the ground, they disintegrate, and so internally they do start off with a powdered form, and it's just the trick to getting it to hang together long enough to be transported and blended and put onto the fields. So if they can get this granular product commercialized and ready to be used, plus this carbon capture, they can sell these carbon credits in parallel to selling the K-Fort and discount it, and they could end up displacing more than 50% of Brazil's potash consumption. They could end up displacing 100% of it if they go way beyond the 50 million ton per annum that they've done a pre-feasibility study on to show, here's how much we could deliver. And they have a resource of about 1.7 billion tons of K2 of K-Forte, but their global resource is up in the 6 billion tons. So if this became a really big deal, they could actually completely replace the potassium chloride market. But we have to see that there is enough of a difference between the carbon footprint of making this stuff and applying it and what is captured, and then see if they can create a structure whereby it can be sold and be adopted by an international market of corporations seeking to offset their carbon footprints by purchasing carbon credits.
Why do you think Toyota may be FPX Nickel's mystery investor?
Well, we've all been speculating as to who it might be. We're pretty sure it's not some sort of institutional investment banking entity. We're pretty sure that it's not a mining company. This financing was done in November, December of last year for $12 million, I believe, at 50 cents, and the party stayed below 10%, 9.9% recently. When Outokumpu put up $16 million, they coughed up another $1.9 million to stay at 9.9%. And the way the CEO Martin Turenne talked about this entity, it sounded like this entity was a big name, which if people knew who it was, they would be impressed. And FPX Nickel would stop trading at this 50-cent price and be back up there at that $1.50 to $2 level, where it really should be based on the economics we saw in the PEA, and which I think, with a 20% cost escalation, when the PFS comes out, it'll still be in the money, justifying going ahead. I didn't think it was a downstream battery maker, because what reason do they have to be interested in FPX Nickel? And I didn't think it was sort of a chemical precursor company. So I thought it would be somebody farther downstream, and we've speculated maybe it's somebody like Apple or Google, who are making their self-driving cars, and they're still doing all the R&D, but they might want a clean, ESG credentialed source of nickel for the cathode of a future lithium-ion battery. And we saw the JOGMEC deal being done this year, an alliance, a global alliance, to look for similar awaroite type nickel deposits around the world. And of course, JOGMEC is a Japanese government agency who kind of does the scout work to secure raw material supply for its big corporations, of whom Toyota is one of them. And so I speculate maybe it's some of these other big Japanese car makers, such as Honda and that, who are making electric vehicles, that might be the secret investor, but not Toyota, because Toyota has stood out in ignoring the push towards EV development. It has stuck to plug-in hybrids and ordinary hybrids while it worked on hydrogen fuel cell technology. But the problem with the hydrogen fuel cell technology is, where are the refueling stations? How do you get the hydrogen to these stations? Yeah, every gas station could become a hydrogen station, but you've got to get the hydrogen there. You got to have the hydrogen available. There's no clear plan for this happening on a global scale. Electricity is everywhere. You have a good lithium-ion battery car. You plug it in, you charge it. But Toyota, being the largest maker of cars in the world, and with also the low-end cars like Corolla, extremely popular. People love them. They have good driving range. I suspect Toyota didn't want to get into the EV sector until it had a battery that it knew it could scale. And the holy grail for the whole lithium-ion battery world is a solid-state electrolyte that allows you to use lithium metal in the anode instead of graphite. And on July 5th, Toyota stunned the world by saying, we believe we have solved the way of making an economic battery that has a solid-state electrolyte, and they made the shocking statement that it will have a driving range of 1,200 kilometers, and it will charge in 10 minutes. And if they can deliver a car like that, then the EV revolution, it's a done deal. Now, what they plan to launch in 2027 is obviously going to be high-end. And the cathode for this type of battery is going to likely continue to require nickel. So I suspect Toyota has been sitting on this, developing it, working on it, and it saw what FPX Nickel was developing at the car, and it understood that, yeah, let's help these people, and we really don't want anybody to know, because if we're supposedly ignoring the EV market, why would we be putting $12 million into this junior that hopes to develop a mine for a metal that's primarily used for stainless steel? So there were good reasons for it to keep quiet, keep its identity quiet. But I think coming out now and saying, we have this technology, and their breakthrough isn't a new configuration. It appears the ways to make a solid-state electrolyte for the lithium-ion battery, they're understood. It's the manufacturing process. How do you not blow your brains out making this stuff and ending up with a battery that's way too expensive? They have done in-house, they claim to have achieved a manufacturing breakthrough as to how to make this. And this type of battery, it's not going to turn into a bomb. You will not get the thermal runaway, which is the main reason we have liquid electrolytes in these batteries. And this is potentially significant because groups like Tesla have been shifting towards the lithium iron phosphate the batteries, which do not use nickel. They're for the low-end market, and but the range is short and the charging times are long. This is not the ideal battery. I personally do not see these LFP fueled cars really making inroads with the masses. Now, the masses won't be able to afford whatever it is that Toyota delivers in 2027. But we know that when everything's a manufacturing process, as you work on it and you get your economies of scale and you work out the bugs, the cost of production goes down. We've seen that with solar cells. Who would have thought that 8 years ago that they would be as cheap as they are today? Well, all of this is as a result of the fabrication costs being brought down. The raw input costs, they're not going to go down because these are all scarce materials. So I think Toyota is the mystery investor behind FPX Nickel back in November, December last year. And I think when people, if they ever reveal that this is the case, I think the market will finally understand that groups made the biggest car maker in the world is actually looking forward and might even end up being the party that develops the car rather than rely on one of these entities like Glencore with their bad reputations in the mining sector. This would be a clean, from-scratch operation, and these companies have oodles of money to do this and make it happen.
Any news on the James Bay forest access restrictions?
Last week I was pretty optimistic that we would have a green light, but the fires have really spun out of control in the James Bay area. The western half of the whole James Bay region is still closed for the forest access ban. When you look at the map, you can sort of see, okay, so where the Plex project of Brunswick begins and goes west, everything to the west is banned. Where Patriot Battery has its Corvette project and Brunswick has its Mirage project farther east, that apparently is open, but the roads, the Trans-Taiga Road, they are all still closed. And even if you wanted to go to the eastern part, for example, Dios Explorations, most of its properties are still within the closed area, but East Clarkey, which they announced a few weeks ago, it's outside there. But and they had hoped to be in the field by mid-July. They're now saying, well, it's mid-August. There will be lots of rain by then. The real problem right now is the helicopters are still being requisitioned to help fight the fire. So if your boots on the ground need to be dropped in by helicopter, you can't do anything. And this isn't exactly a world where there's roads everywhere where you can do roadside geology. So everybody is still cooling their heels. All these prospectors, these people who are going to be out in the field and make a ton of money this year, they are extremely unhappy. They've got no work to do that they had hoped to be doing. Brunswick this week did put out more results on its Anataka West project, but it can't go back in there. The results are pretty good. It's not world class. It's an extension of the Allchem Galaxy Sear system, which is a similar style of on echelon dikes, maybe 300, 400 meters long. But they can't go in there and continue work. They can't go back onto the Anataka main project because that's also within this area. And what the market really wants to hear with them is, have you found the bedrock source for Mirage? And Mirage, you could actually go there, and they're not really saying what they're doing about this, but it's 300 kilometers from the sort of Nemaskawa area, but it's only 100 kilometers north of the Renard Diamond Mine, and that's now part of the Osisko Gold Royalties group. They have a part stake in it, ended up in bankruptcy. So hopefully maybe they can be able to put boots on the ground in that part, because the fires are more towards Hudson Bay and the actual watery James Bay area. I talked to Dominique Doucette of Sirius Resources, who managed to get a small bulk sample out of the Chichu project, but they only had 3 hours to walk the ground in that area where the spodumene boulder had been seen slightly up ice from that area. And he says they got the notice, you have to get out now. Everything is being closed because of the fires. So they also are frustrated, wondering, okay, when are we going to be able to go back in there and find the source of our spodumene boulders? And who knows, when you look hard enough, you might find something significant similar to what Brunswick may have at Mirage. And again, in the Sirius Chichu ground, it's the area that's most likely to be the source, straddles the boundary between the La Grande and the Opanica sub-provinces, which is apparently a key place where you are going to hope to find the pegmatite bodies. Sirius also put out news on the Maxwa project to the west. It had gone back to the till sampling it did in 2020, which was mainly for gold and tungsten, looking for reduced intrusion-related gold system. They also managed to pick out some platinum and palladium grains in it, but they went back in there and they were able to see that the lines all had elevated tantalum values. And tantalum is a heavy mineral. It has a specific gravity about 16 compared to about 19 for gold. So they found all these tantalum grains. You would never find lithium grains in a heavy mineral concentrate because it's only its density is 0.5. Now, the only thing that's sort of either positive or negative about this, like all 3 lines have similar elevated values, whereas you can tell with the gold, the southern line has a much higher grain count than the upper one. So there's some gold deposit up ice from that. With the case of the tantalum, maybe it comes farther up ice beyond the property boundaries, or if they're really lucky, they have a number of LCT type pegmatites in this area that are shedding this to all three lines, which is why all three look elevated. So again, they can't go in there and physically check out anything. It's extremely frustrating for everybody who has properties in the James Bay region, and we can just sit here and hope that rain comes and they get these fires out and allow exploration to resume. Everybody's guessing it will be mid-August by the time we can get in there. And that's what DLS Exploration is doing. They've got very precisely set targets where, they'll know exactly where to put the helicopter down to confirm whether or not there's a pegmatite there. So they hope in the shortened period that they can do surgical strikes and come up with a list of interesting targets. They probably won't have it done in time to drill in September. I think almost everybody is going to be targeting the first quarter of next year in winter for drilling, provided they can get their boots on the ground before the snow covers everything in early November.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been talking with John Kaiser. I'm Jim Goddard. Comments made on Kaiser Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as a recommendation to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at kaiserresearch.com.